In the catastrophic opening of Blackout, a sudden nuclear strike devastates California within mere minutes, transforming the Golden Coast into a literal hellscape. The sky turns a sickly, bruised orange as the electromagnetic pulse causes power and communications to collapse instantly, plunging the population into a terrifying dark age. A mixed group of strangers finds themselves trapped together in the cavernous belly of a vast industrial warehouse just as the shockwaves subside. Among this frantic assembly are hardened military veterans, opportunistic criminals, and ordinary civilians who were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Though they do not know each other's names, they share a heavy, silent fear that bonds them in the flickering emergency light. The radiation outside makes the world instantly lethal, turning the atmosphere into a poison that no one can escape. This warehouse, once a temple of commerce, becomes their only temporary refuge against the invisible fire of the fallout. However, human tension quickly replaces the external threat as the gravity of their situation begins to sink in deeply. Water and food supplies are identified as critical issues that will dictate who lives and who dies in the coming days. Everyone begins to watch each other with growing suspicion, waiting for the masks of civility to fall away completely. Hidden pasts begin to surface through nervous tics and guarded glances, proving that survival will depend as much on the people as it does on the harsh environment. Ella Daniels naturally takes on a pragmatic leadership role, her calm demeanor acting as a fragile anchor for the panicked survivors huddled in the shadows. Aisha begins organizing the meager resources with a cold, sharpening logic, counting every calorie while Atticus Red guards the high steel entrances in a brooding, heavy silence. Knox, a man with a volatile edge, immediately rejects any form of authority, his presence acting as a constant friction against the group's collective need for order. Meanwhile, Wrench and Wolf obsessively inspect the building's massive structure, searching for weaknesses that the blast might have exploited in the reinforced concrete. Arguments rise like heat waves among the group as the realization sets in that no one truly knows how long they must remain entombed in this metal box. The silence outside is more terrifying than the initial blast, a void where a bustling civilization used to exist just hours before. Some members, driven by claustrophobia, want to leave immediately despite the warnings that the air is a silent killer. Others understand with grim clarity that stepping past those steel doors means an agonizing and certain death. A fragile hierarchy begins to form out of necessity, but trust is already thinning like the mountain air as resources dwindle. The psychological walls of the warehouse are closing in, making the survivors realize that their sanctuary is also a potential tomb. During the first long night, strange and desperate noises begin to echo from the world outside, chilling the blood of everyone inside the warehouse. Silhouettes of shadows move against the frosted glass of the secondary doors, trying to force their way into the only safe place left in the district. Dog and Hugo move quickly to block the entrance with heavy metal pallets, their muscles straining against the weight as the sounds of scratching increase. The strangers outside begin by pleading for mercy, their voices cracking with radiation-burned lungs, before their cries turn into frantic, violent threats. The group inside faces a harrowing moral choice of whether to open the doors to save a few or keep them shut to protect the many. Ella ultimately refuses to break the seal for the sake of collective safety, her face a mask of stone as the pleas continue. This singular decision creates a deep moral fracture within the group, leaving an invisible scar on their collective conscience. The screams finally stop by morning, replaced by a haunting quiet that feels heavier than the noise ever did. No one speaks about the people they left to die, but the crushing weight of guilt lingers in the air like a physical presence. They all realize in that moment that their ordinary humanity is fading away, replaced by something much darker. The old world has truly vanished, leaving behind only the cold, hard requirements of raw survival in the ruins. While exploring the dusty upper floors, Kai discovers a hidden stash of supplies tucked away in an overlooked maintenance closet near the roof. He finds crates of water bottles, canned food, and high-powered flashlights that seem like a miracle to the starving group below. Hope briefly returns to the weary survivors, but this sudden wealth quickly triggers a dangerous wave of greed among the more desperate members. Knox is caught trying to hide a portion of the provisions for himself, leading to a confrontation that nearly ends in bloodshed. Hassan is the one who catches him, and a violent fight breaks out on the catwalks, highlighting how quickly the group is splitting over the ethics of sharing versus hoarding. Ella is forced to step in and enforce strict rationing rules, her voice echoing through the hollow warehouse to maintain some semblance of order. Trust becomes a rare and expensive currency that no one seems willing to spend on their neighbors anymore. Eyes that were once filled with fear grow harder and more calculating, looking at allies as potential thieves of their next meal. The internal threat is now far more immediate than the radiation lingering outside the thick walls. The refuge is starting to rot internally, as the lack of a future makes every present moment a battle for dominance. Every shared meal is tainted by the knowledge that the food is finite and the hunger is eternal. A massive radioactive storm passes through the area on the third day, bringing with it a terrifying display of atmospheric phenomena. Glowing, lethal particles begin to seep through broken high-altitude windows, shimmering in the air like diamond dust that carries a death sentence. Everyone is forced to hide in the lowest, most protected section of the building, huddling together in the damp darkness of the basement. Panic spreads like wildfire among several members who realize that even their thick walls cannot keep out the invisible enemy forever. Wolf begins to show the early, unmistakable. The fragile peace is shattered for good when a group of looters eventually breaches the building's perimeter defenses. These attackers are not like the desperate souls from the first night, they are armed, organized, and clearly hunting for resources. Atticus and Dog are forced to defend the main entrance brutally, their weapons roaring in the narrow metal corridors. Gunshots echo through the warehouse, the sound amplified by the high ceilings and empty crates until it becomes a deafening roar. Aisha is seriously wounded during the chaotic exchange of fire, her blood staining the floor of their sanctuary. Though the looters eventually retreat with some of the group's supplies, the victory feels hollow and bitter to the defenders. The presence of blood inside the warehouse changes the fundamental nature of their refuge, proving it is no longer safe. They realize with a sudden, sharp clarity that others will inevitably come, drawn by the same desperation that keeps them inside. Staying in the warehouse now means simply waiting for the next, perhaps more successful, attack to occur. No good options remain for the group, as they are caught between the threat of violence and the threat of the invisible poison outside. Ella makes the difficult executive decision that they must leave the warehouse before they are slaughtered by the next wave of marauders. Radiation readings on their scavenged equipment show a slight but significant decrease in the lethal levels of the local environment. They begin to improvise crude protective suits from rolls of heavy plastic and industrial tape, working with a frantic, focused energy. The new plan is to attempt a dangerous trek to the nearby port in hopes of finding a way to escape by sea. Some members of the group, paralyzed by fear of the fallout, refuse to leave and choose to stay behind in the relative comfort of the building. The group splits in a tense, heavy silence that marks the end of their time together under one roof. Those who choose to leave know in their hearts that they will never return to this place or see their companions again. Guilt follows every step as they seal their improvised suits and prepare to open the doors to the world. Their survival instinct has finally won out over their fear of the unknown, driving them toward the coast. They walk out into the gray, ash-covered world, leaving their humanity behind in the dirt of the warehouse floor. The trek across the city feels like a journey through a literal apocalypse, with every block revealing a new horror of the nuclear age. They pass burned-out cars, collapsed residential buildings, and the abandoned bodies of those who weren't lucky enough to find a shelter. Ash floats through a perpetually gray sky like a winter snow that never melts, coating everything in a layer of radioactive dust. Aisha struggles to walk due to her wound, her breath coming in ragged, painful gasps through her plastic mask. Atticus shows his true strength by carrying her for miles through the debris, refusing to let her fall behind the others. They occasionally encounter feral survivors lurking in the ruins, but every meeting feels like a potential death sentence. They avoid all human contact, moving like ghosts through the skeletons of a civilization that was once their home. Exhaustion slows their pace to a crawl, and the weight of their makeshift suits becomes almost unbearable in the heat. But despite the obstacles, the silhouette of the port appears at last through the haze of smoke. Hope flickers again in their tired eyes as they see the water, providing them with the strength for one final push. Upon reaching the port, they managed to find an intact fishing boat that miraculously survived the initial blast and the subsequent looting. They rush to the vessel, their hands shaking as they prepare the engine and check for fuel to make their departure. However, the desperate group that had chosen to stay behind in the warehouse has followed them through the ruins, led by a feverish and dying wolf. He is barely recognizable, his mind unhinged by the sickness and the betrayal he feels at being left behind. He stands on the dock, accusing Ella of abandoning her own people to die in the dark while she sought a way out. A final, explosive confrontation erupts on the empty dock, with tensions boiling over into shouting and desperate threats of violence. Wolf suddenly collapses from sheer physical weakness, his body finally giving out under the strain of the radiation and the journey. His anger seems to fade into a deep, hollow exhaustion as he looks up at his former friends from the cold ground. Ella, moved by a final spark of her old humanity, helps him onto the boat anyway, refusing to leave him a second time. This singular act of mercy briefly reunites the fractured group in their final moments on land. They finally cast off the lines and leave the ruined, smoldering coast of California behind, the engines hum the only sound in the air. At sea, a profound and heavy silence replaces the chaotic noise of the city and the warehouse struggles. No one speaks for hours, each survivor lost in their own thoughts as they watch the horizon for signs of life. They watch the mainland fade into a thick, gray haze of smoke and fallout, knowing that everything they once loved is gone. Some members of the group cry quietly in the corners of the deck, their plastic suits finally discarded in the clean sea air. They have survived the impossible, but they have lost their homes, their families, and their innocence along the way. Ella stands at the helm, looking out at the vast, empty horizon with a face that has aged years in just a few days. She knows with a chilling certainty that this escape is only the beginning of a much longer struggle for survival. The world they are entering is now unpredictable and potentially more dangerous than the one they left. But in the quiet of the open ocean, they realize they have regained something vital that they nearly lost in the warehouse. A fragile sense of solidarity begins to bloom among the survivors as they share the last of their water in the middle of the Pacific. The boat moves steadily toward the unknown, leaving the scorched earth behind in favor of a clean, blue uncertainty. There are no maps for the world that exists after the sirens, only the will to keep moving forward. Ella watches the sun begin to break through the haze, casting a pale, real light over the small group of survivors. They are battered, bruised, and haunted, but they are still breathing, and for now, that is enough to justify the pain. The film ends on this uncertain escape, with the small boat looking like a tiny speck of hope on a vast and indifferent sea. They don't know where they are going, but they are going there together, having survived the blackout of civilization itself. Whether they find land or another storm, they have proven that even in the dark, the human spirit refuses to be completely extinguished.